Hey everyone, Gore the Rogue, Greg Satilla here to talk about one of the major changes coming to World of Warcraft Classic with the upcoming expansion, the Burning Crusade, and that is the shrink in raid size from 40 man down to 25. Not to go all boomer on you, but back in my day, it was incredibly difficult for a lot of guilds to fill a 40 man raid on a regular basis. Raiding wasn't the be-all and end-all of the MMO experience at the time. In fact, I don't believe that most people that played even really understood raids during the vanilla era of World of Warcraft. There was a vague path you could follow to learn the skills necessary to survive a raid, as the bosses in the endgame dungeons of Skolomance, Stratholme, and Upper Blackrock Spire had some basic mechanics that in most cases needed to be recognized and understood in order to defeat them. Dracasath would conflag, the Beast would fear, Baron Rivendare had an AoE aura, little cookie crumbs on how to deal with mechanics on a small scale. I think the devs figured people would figure out how to deal with these mechanics and it would translate over onto the raiding experience. That, however, was not the case in what I believe to be most players' experience at the time. My first experiences in 40-man raiding were comically bad. 3 DPS beating on a boss while a tank tries to hold threat is one thing when you're playing in a small group. 25 DPS beating on a boss while one tank tried to hold threat when the concept of threat was poor at best was completely different. Shadow bolts and frost bolts were zipping through the air while the tank was still 20 yards from the mobs. Server size, community awareness, hardware limitations, the in-game knowledge of the average player, lack of add-ons, and so forth all made raiding a completely different experience back in the day. There were no organized world buffs to help carry you through. If you managed a random Onyxia buff, it was really nice, but far from expected. I remember my first Whispers of Molten Core. It took 40 people to do it? That seemed impossible. It was hard enough getting 15 for UBRS at the time. In my personal experience, not many guilds on my server were raiding. There were maybe 1 or 2 Horde guilds that were raiding, and it didn't seem likely for me to get an invite, and any pugs that tried to organize to enter MC couldn't even get past the first 2 Molten Giants. So I transferred to a new server, re-leveled the exact same character, found a guild, and finally rolled into MC. And with great difficulty, we made our way through MC, wiping often and slowly making progress, the guild almost falling apart completely several times. We went through 3 or 4 guild leadership changes, name changes, merged with another guild, and still struggled to fill our raid strats or truly find success. Our guild was almost destroyed by Ragnaros, Razorgore, Valestraz, Chromagus, Nefarian, and the Twin Imps, which was the height of our progress. The announcement of switching to a 25-man raid from a 40-man raid was a godsend. We had about 25 serious players. Although all 25 of us were not good, we were serious. And kind of a rotating group of people that filled up about 15 of the slots, if we were able to even fill them all. 25-man was the way we were going to cut the chaff and get down to some real serious raiding. And honestly, it kind of worked out for my group, sort of. Karazhan split our guild again after one team cleared it fairly easily and the other team struggled to get past the Shade of Aran, so our 10-man team split off and built what would become the top Horde guild on Malfurion for most of TBC. 25-man was our sweet spot, and it worked out for us, and it was really nice to unify around that 25-man raid. 2021 is a different story now. The release of World of Warcraft Classic in 2019 brought back battle-hardened adventurers who had continued to play MMOs and RPGs for over a decade after TBC came out. The increased server sizes and the hunger of the gamers changed the landscape of World of Warcraft Classic. Back where my server had maybe 1 or 2 guilds finish AQ40 during vanilla, in the classic era my server Mankrik had over 130 guilds take down the Great Godly Eye. Guilds were no longer 20 to 25 people with ambition and a hunger to learn how the game actually worked, and 15 to 20 people dragging along for the ride. Now guilds were overflowing with loot-hungry power gamers. Before the game even launched, we had our pre-BIS lists, our BIS lists for every phase. We knew our rotations, the reps and mats we needed to farm. We had YouTube videos and Wowhead. We weren't here to fuck around. We came back to WoW to dominate the game. Now, I'm not going to say that our roster of 40 is made of the best players in the game by any means, but our roster of 40 is made up of mostly competent players, and even our worst players are light years better than our worst players in vanilla. So now the paring down to 25 can feel like your family is kind of being torn apart, and it's tough to deal with even if you are not in the guild leadership. There are lots of things that need to be taken into consideration when you are looking how to handle paring down your raid size. You have to look at things like interpersonal relationships. Your guild shitter might be best friends with your all-star, and you might have to keep them together to keep your star happy. You have to look at class balance. How do you deal with your 17 melee DPS classes that don't want to swap? Or maybe you have 7 to 10 mages. Either way, you have less slots available for each class, and how you solve this is going to be challenging. Paring down or adding more? Do you want to cut down to 25 or recruit up to 50 and have 2 raid teams? Do you do 25 with a rotating bench, or do you do a main 25 raid and then a second raid with 15 mains and 10 alts? If you do that, how do you divide the teams? You still want to stack your all-stars in most cases because people love to see success in the parses, but you also need to protect the relationships of the people in your guild. Friends want to play together. Do you even want to keep your guild's current goals? Were you a middle-of-the-pack guild content with just seeing content and thinking of ramping up your performance and speed a bit more? Or were you a hardcore speedrunning guild that is getting a little tired of it and want to slow things down a bit and relax? Also, don't forget the changes to TBC with phases. We are no longer seeing Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep open up with Karazhan at the start of TBC, so there will be more time to experiment in Kara and see how your guild responds. You might be surprised and find some of your less enthused players before are now chomping at the bit with new talents and abilities. Your top players might burn out and leave before you get to phase 2 of TBC. Guilds will have more time to get through Kara, and honestly, a guild of 30 to 40 with 3 to 4 Kara teams might not be the worst idea for some guilds. With no official release date, a lot of guilds haven't tipped their hands yet on what their position is going into TBC, and that might not be the worst idea. Keeping the status quo isn't the worst, but people are going to start getting more and more antsy for their guilds to give them details on how they're going to approach the Burning Crusade. I know in my own guild of Q-Choose, we have already had a survey go out on what player expectation is and what we would like to be and play as in the Burning Crusade, and officers are taking that into account as they prepare their plan for the Burning Crusade. But we have a pretty tight-knit community, and our guild has pretty much been a core group of people since the start of World of Warcraft Classic, so it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, as we are a fairly tight-knit group. So how does your guild plan on handling the changes to raiding size in the Burning Crusade? Do you have any unique ways your guild is handling the change? Maybe having a giant dueling tournament for raid slots? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested in how some guilds are taking this shrink down, because it's a very different environment that's happening in compared to what the world was like in World of Warcraft during vanilla. So thank you very much everyone for watching this video. Once again, you can see my other links below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. I'll have more content on the Burning Crusade and other role-playing games coming soon in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.